Okay, so I'm going to introduce our next presenter, somebody we've been working with for a very long time. Randall Newton is here. Randall's the Managing Director of Consilia Vektor. They're a research consultancy specializing in engineering and distributed ledger technology. So in addition, you may know Randall. He's a contributing editor to our blog. He does a lot of the writing for the Synergis Software blog, so if you're avid readers of that, you're pretty familiar with Randall already. He's also a contributing editor for Digital Engineering and Cadalyst magazine as well. Been in the software industry, like so many of us in this room, on the Synergis side and all of you, since the mid-'80s. He's written CAD add-on applications. He's been an industry analyst. He's been a marketer and certainly an editor as well. And all these experiences poise Randall to be on the cutting edge of innovation, which is where he's really most passionate. So he's going to share some insights with us today on how innovation surges happen and what technologies are emerging now that will bring on the next surge. So, as his Twitter bio states, run faster, the future won't wait. So please join me in welcoming Randall to the stage.
Okay, we didn't practice. Is there a clicker here? Is this my clicker? How do we do it? Oh, I want to do it on the machine? Oh, on the computer? Okay. All right. Since I didn't use the official template, there isn't a slide with my picture. Well, you know what I look like. What can I add? Former employee Autodesk, former employee Bentley Systems. So I've been around the block. I lived for 2 years in Morgantown, PA. If you guys are locals, you'll know Morgantown, into the main line. But we'd moved from rural Washington State to take the job at Bentley. And my boss then became a friend, and my wife became her babysitter because she had a baby while I was at Bentley. One day she came in, she pulled me into her office and said, I just quit. I'm moving to Colorado. Oh, I need to back up. 30 days before that, she gave us approval to be remote workers. We moved back to Washington, but she said, don't tell anybody. 30 days later, I'm back in Exton. She says, oh, I quit, moving to Colorado, going to go work for Spatial Technologies, which later became part of Dassault Systems. And she said, and I just told the VP that you don't live here anymore. So I get hauled into his office, and he gives me this big lecture about how you blah, blah, blah. And I say, hey, look, Rachel approved all of it. He said, well, you're on probation for as long as you work for us. And he was gone before I was. So I guess the probation bounced. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I want to give you, this is a metaphor musing on innovation as a quantum problem. I love reading things about quantum mechanics. It's way over my head. And when I go into it, sometimes it speaks to me about spirituality instead of physics. It's just crazy stuff. The more you get into it, the weirder it gets, right? But anyway, I want to do a little bit of weirdness, but we're going to fly up to like 30,000 feet to look at the weirdness. But then I want to land back where you guys are. That's the big goal today. By the way, that's a reinterpretation of Schrodinger's cat for the 21st century. Is that cat dead or alive in the box? Of course, we don't know till we crack open and see what Amazon sent us, a dead cat or a live cat. We just don't know. All right, now, Internet 1.0 gave us a couple of philosophical touch points, right? There's going to be a lot of review here. You guys are all experts in all of this stuff. You were around when the world was created. You know, Internet, a few of you in the room don't have gray hair yet, so you know, that's not true of everybody. But anyway, Stuart Brand, the guy behind, help me out, Coevolution Quarterly, all that stuff. Information wants to be free. It's been quoted for years. About a month ago, that came out that there was a recording of the meeting where he said that, and he mumbled almost wants to be free. So I had to modify the quote. And then, of course, Lawrence Lessig made his claim to fame as a lawyer studying the internet by saying, in cyberspace, code is the law. So there we have two competing tensions there, right? Is knowledge about freedom or is knowledge about control? Well, I want to reposition that today in a way that helps us explore it from a metaphor of quantum entanglement. Is knowledge a wave or is knowledge a particle? And then we're going to talk about innovation as how it comes into that. This is going to get weird, and if you don't like it, don't fill out the survey afterwards that says what a great speaker I am. So let's list a little bit of review from my one class in basic physics in college. It was subtitled at Baylor, it was College for Jocks and Frat Boys. Because there was one teacher that those guys took so that they could get a good grade in physics. And well, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me, right? So we have the quantum nature of light. It's both wave and particle. And this photograph, this is not a reconstruction. It's a photograph. It was taken about 3 years ago. It actually shows the wave and particle nature of light. It was a big breakthrough. Surely somebody will get a Nobel out of it, right? But the quantum nature of innovation to me is that it is both wave and stack. Now, my vegan daughter tells me that Oreos are vegan. And if that isn't an oxymoron for the modern era, I don't know what is. Anyway, that's just an aside. So I want to talk about this wave. Now, most of in this room, our lifetimes are about what's happened here. From the mainframe era when I was a kid, where at one time IBM CEO said, why are we going to build these things? There's only going to be a market for 10 of them. It turned into the centralized mainframe era, and between IBM and Amdahl and the other competitors that came along, it was 100,000 units. And computers were, the subject of evil movies. And anyway, mini-computer era come along in the 70s. And now it's a departmentalized function. It's not for the whole corporation anymore for specific data entry tasks. And that shot the number of computers in the world up to about 10 million. These statistics are not from any one particular source. What I always do, if I wasn't the researcher to make the numbers, is I get numbers from several places and aggregate them and figure out the mean, so to speak. So anyway, that's where all the numbers in this will come from. Because somebody told me once, if you don't have numbers, you're not an analyst. So always have numbers. Anyway, next, the PC era, where we all kind of really got into things, right? I started this business in the 80s, but they didn't really take off big, until the 90s or so. Personal and group tasks. The realm gets smaller, the use gets bigger. The next wave, the worldwide era. Now we're up to global connectivity. We've got 100 million units of computing going on. So I'll to explain what SMAC era is in a minute, but well, it's there. Social, mobile, analytical, and cloud. Now we're talking about 100 billion units maybe? Anyway, these are waves of hardware technology innovation that have overwhelmed us, and we've had to cope with them, figure them out, and put them to use. We hit it, and we find our innovation groove, so to speak, and everything happens. So let's talk about stacks a little bit. Programmers is where the term comes from, because there will be several technologies, ecosystems that when you put them together, you have a working system. The LAMP stack is what allowed the internet as we've known it to exist. Linux, Apache, MySQL or something similar, and Python or PHP or somebody will say the third one. There's 3 programming scripting languages. I'll start with a P, and the third one's escaping me right now. Perl, yes. And together, that became the infrastructure that allowed the Internet 1.0 to happen. And subsequent innovations keep happening to keep that LAMP stack, of course, relevant. And it's so interesting to know that in this day and age, there's still organizations like ICON and the other guys that they're in charge of all this stuff. It's all open source. It all keeps the world running smoothly. It's amazing. The next stack was kind of identified by analysts a few years ago. I feel like in my heart that I found it at the same time as the guys that got noted for it, but I called it CAMS, and it didn't take off. Just letters in different order. Anyway, social, mobile, analytics, the cloud. Instead of 4 specific pieces of software, Linux, etc., now we've got 4 technology ecosystems. And this was really the second internet, I think, and it exploded in terms of what could be accomplished. The evolution of the LAMP stack, you can see from these 2 pictures, from Netscape and announcing it's ready for Windows 95, to Adept and SolidWorks working together. It's all part of the growth of what that technology gave us. Total platform for amazing innovation. Amazon wouldn't exist without it. You know, Google, of course, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to tell you all that. Smack Stack evolution, really the poster child for the Smack revolution is the smartphone. And Apple had the first smartphone, and BlackBerry got eaten alive, right? This is Onshape. I know there's no Adept integration with Onshape. There may never be, that's okay. But these guys really are trailblazing the limits of what our industry can do when you take social computing, mobile computing, cloud, and big data and put it together. And I give my hats off to them. They're growing a little bit slower. If you know about Onshape, you know it's SolidWorks founders said, let's get the band back together. And from everything I can tell, because they're really being tightly about this, they're growing at a slightly slower pace than SolidWorks did. And SolidWorks was actually pretty phenomenal in its early growth. So they're doing okay. They're also the only unicorn in our business. A unicorn is defined by venture capitalists as startups with a net value of over $1 billion based on the venture capital input and the valuations assigned for that ownership. They don't admit to that. That's my research that says that they're a unicorn in our industry. Anyway, so that's kind of where SMAC has taken us, the cloud, the mobile, the social, and the big data. I want to tell you what I believe is the next stack that is forming. Because to understand where innovation needs to go, I think we need to understand where these technology waves are going. And yeah, okay. There's two screens up here, and I got to figure out which one's which. I think of it, at first I started calling it roadie, and then that sounded too rockish, you know. Oh, I'm a roadie with the band, such and such. So I put the I on the front. But I think that this is the next stack. It is the combination of intelligence. We use that term all the time when we're talking about this kind of stuff, right? But it's intelligence augmented by real-time, operational, autonomous decentralization. That's a mouthful. And it's even more of an abstraction than, say, social, cloud, big data, et cetera. Because it is a bunch of technologies, but they're all kind of coming on us to varying degrees. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, which is distributed ledger technology, the way the bankers wish we would refer to it. And all of these different things. There's a large list here. If anybody wants the slides, just give me your card afterwards and write what you want on it, and I'll send them to you. All of this is coming together at various degrees. 5G, the implementation is just rolling out. If you have not wrapped your head around what 5G means yet, I highly recommend it. We have this thing going on with Internet of Things, right, where we want to attach sensors and get feedback to every device, every machine, etc. 5G is going to boom that, 100x, like they talk about in crypto investing. To the moon, 100x. It's going to be big. It's going to make internet great again. Things like edge and fog computing still on the horizon. It's decentralizing processing. Deep learning. I've written a couple of articles recently for Digital Engineering Magazine on the subjects of deep learning and AI. Look them up. It's mind-blowing, some of the things that are going to happen. And I just got an assignment yesterday from Digital Engineering. My next article is going to be, well, it won't be till December, but the next article I'm writing is about AI hype factor in engineering. So that'll be interesting. I haven't done the research yet. I can't tell you what it is. But anyway, this is what's happening now. All of these things coming together. It's the next, I believe, integration wave. And it's creating what I refer to as Agora machines or Agora infrastructure. What's Agora? It's the Greek word for the marketplace, for internet exchange. Everybody comes together, right? Because we are creating, over this next cycle, machines that can be intelligent, autonomous, and they are situationally aware, they are interactive, and they are trustworthy. That's a mouthful. It's a lot of aspects. It's a lot of technology. But I think the same thing's going to happen to infrastructure, but it's not going to be like the autonomous cars that people are working on now. I don't think our infrastructure is going to go places. I think it's going to stay put. I think that's a safe bet. But we've had discussion without calling them Agora machines in the marketplace. In science fiction, which always prepares us for the worst, right? And I just cried so much on that AI. It was just so sad. Anyway, but the reality is there are already 8.4 billion devices connected to the internet. What did the senator from when we were children, Everett Dirksen, he said, billion here, billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money in terms of the federal budget. Boy, those were the days, huh? But anyway, the consensus estimate is 30 billion IoT devices by 2020, and a market value for creating and deploying all this, $7.1 trillion. Now we're really talking big money, big advances, and all with this comes big data, big bandwidth on a scale that, again, to the moon compared to what we got now. I'm going to mention some of those in a minute. So I've mentioned blockchain, and I get a lot of questions because most people, what they know of blockchain is, oh yeah, Bitcoin. Isn't that dying? Oh, isn't that shooting up really high? What? Why? Blah, blah, blah. The underlying technology, blockchain, is revolutionary. And here's just a guide. I got it. There's the reference. Smart contracts. That brings the trust nature. It automates trust and decentralizes trust. And for those of you that are in some form of construction, you're creating, your capital projects, you organize them, you know that the construction business is supposedly design, bid, and build, but there's a fourth element always, right? Sue. Nobody trusts anybody in construction. The best projects, the easiest projects, are where you control everything. You design it, you don't bid it out because you're going to build it, that's great. You don't sue yourself. But otherwise, there's no trust in that industry. And it's a huge driver of total inefficiency and really ripe. And there are companies working on it now. But anyway, in a bigger picture, smart contracts from simple to complex and the sort of things that can be accomplished. And some of this is audacious and on the far end, and we'll leave it there for now. So, industry is interested in this subject. Right now, 2016 actually, it's the best numbers I could find, enterprise blockchain spending for research and development, there's very few deployments. Even now in 2018, we're still talking about alpha projects and test sites, but it's getting really close. Already 2.3 billion spent on it. The estimate for the market in 2024, you can see it up there. If you're interested in any of this stuff, these are the power blockchains for industry: Hyperledger, IOTA, and Ethereum. I don't know if I updated these slides. I actually created this slide a month ago because I gave a speech on this in Barcelona a couple weeks ago. I would probably add another one there called EOS. But these are the drivers of why industry is interested. I talked with a guy from Oracle who all he does is travel around explaining why Oracle's very interested in blockchain. And some of the things he talks about, what they're solving with clients, are mind-blowing. Did you know that for every container vessel that crosses the ocean with cargo, there are 20,000 documents? And you thought, well, we heard this morning, like Dow, the documents, but one container vessel, 20,000 documents, all of them have to go through customs, all of them have to be checked. And he said, in the typical, it's 10% failure rate of documentation, typical, and it's not uncommon for it to go much higher. That one situation alone, they're working on a blockchain solution to decentralize and automate the trust aspect of this really is what it says and that sort of thing. And he said it's going to revolutionize shipping. I said the iPhone was the poster child, so to speak, of the SMAC revolution, the SMAC stack. Here's the poster children for this next, I still calling it roadie there, I switched the I, like I said. That was a last-minute thing. I believe everybody's working on autonomous cars right now, but you know what the most important piece of technology in this is so far? It's GPUs from NVIDIA, graphics processing units. Because it turns out that their parallel processing system is the best way for cars to process all the ginormous amount of data in real time. That's real time. I talked about that as being part of the stack. And the sensors and the interrelationships, because those cars should, when we finally get autonomous cars, they're going to talk to each other. They're going to say, hey, back off, I got this lane, that sort of thing. But in car talk, of course. I miss that show, don't you, Car Talk? Anyway, and of course drones, everybody's favorite thing to hate because you don't want them looking at you sunbathing. Just one of the issues that is the challenge for innovating in this iRoad or this roadie stack is the massive data. VR is going to take off as the other technologies take off. We're going to find real use cases for it outside of games. And watching movies like this. But just the issues, 4K per eye depth perception, that's so there's no puke factor, by the way. The bandwidth issues, the latency issues, it's just everything big, 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 visualization, bad. And that's just one element. But these things are coming together. And this is going to become the next platform for innovation. And what can we do with it? Those are the issues. Okay, I kind of giving you this overview. It's kind of been far and wide. Let's talk about what's next and what's really closer to your horizon. People always use phrases like disruptive innovation, and when you talk about innovation at the level of me and my fellow employees and management, or subcontractors, and that disruption sounds kind of they might. That's not a friendly term. But in the marketplace, it just means you're creating new value by displacing outmoded concepts. But let's bring it inside the organization, in work groups. Innovation creates new processes. And this room is full of people that have given their organizations and their work group new processes. They streamline or they replace existing processes. Why? Because you're a busybody and you don't have anything better to do than make people have to learn new software. No, that's not it. It's because you're creating internal value and you're strengthening alliances. Better software, better communications, the elimination of errors like we learned about. All you have to do is start checking these documents and the errors just boom, boom, boom. You didn't know engineers couldn't spell until you started checking documents one by one, right? I already knew that because I've edited the work of engineers over the years for magazines. I know they can't spell. So. Anyway, and strengthen alliances. That's what's really happening. So let's land this. I want to suggest to you that you, people, as adept administrators, as adept advocates and evangelists, are actually creating an innovation superhero stack at your place of business, within your work groups, within your organizations. You are change agents. And there are 5 attributes of change agents. Again, lots of research distilled it down. I got websites and stuff if you want the background. But if you need other people on your team, these are what you look for. You look people who are well networked. They're more social among your partners and teammates, right? Positive influencers. We used to say, when I worked at Autodesk, I actually started at a CAD, 2D CAD company called Generic Software. Anybody remember Generic CAD? That was my second job in the industry, actually. And we used to say, boy, if only a few more people would retire, we could sell so much more software to people who just wanted simple drafting on their computer. Anyway, positive influencers, not people say, no, that stuff's, forget that. Open-minded, willing to consider options, willing to consider that there might be a better way, willing to consider that, gee, maybe we can be more efficient here. What a novel concept. And they're passionate about innovation. It takes a certain class of person, and I believe this is you, and these are the kind of people that sort of gravitate to each other. But I think there's a key that some of us need to work on perhaps, and it's that they come from different areas of the business. Adept doesn't have to be just in the engineering work group. We've seen that from some of you. And we'll see that from more of you as time goes on, because a useful tool finds a useful home, right? It just takes people with these other 4 steps to willing to move it into new parts of the organization. This funnel has got the fancy names. Well, mystery is not a fancy name, it's a mysterious name. But to go from mystery to heuristic to algorithm is design thinking. It's going to take, I believe, people who use this sort of thinking, and what are we all, if you're trained as an engineer, you're trained in design thinking. To move from the nebulous, oh, everything's here and jibble-jabble, what's Dr. Who say? Space-timey-wimey something. Anyway, from that to, I think I have an idea how it all comes together, and then boom, here's how you can do it. That's the kind of thinking that superheroes of innovation, I think, can be created or made, is because it's a design thinking process that allows you to create all the rest of this stuff. So to kind of summarize, there's always been a tension between knowledge as control versus knowledge as freedom. And it's up to people like you, people like me, that see the process, see the promise, see the future, and want to help create it, that can take the waves of innovation that we have right now, be ready for the next wave of innovation, and just keep making things hum within your organization. And I hope I've given you things to think about. Thank you very much.